Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays brought to you by Lockjack GSB Consulting. I hope everyone is doing well. I want to welcome to our Webinar Wednesday today, everyone joining us from across the region, as well as the US, Canada, the UK. My name is Sasha Dure. I am the Director of the Organizational Development and Assessment Center here at the school, mainly responsible for organizational consulting services. Lockjack GSB continues to offer our academic and executive education programs and consulting services across the region at this time, while our school's physical location remains closed. We are open for business, so give us a call, send us an email, and we will definitely continue to provide you with the support that you need. As we get into our webinar, just a little bit of, I know most of you are very familiar with how the webinars go, but just to remind anyone who's joining us for the first time, to make sure that we have an enjoyable experience during this webinar, remember, turn off your webcams, mute your microphones. As we proceed today, we intend to have a very engaging and interactive session. So as we go along the webinar, I urge you to post your comments and your questions in the chat box. And as we go along, we would take those questions. So start posting away and commenting and asking those questions, all right? At the end as well, your feedback on presenters and the topics presented by a host valuable in crafting new webinars for you. So please complete the feedback forms at the end. The webinar survey link would be shared with you via email and on the post on the chat as well. So we look forward to your feedback. So I'm so excited to welcome you and our presenters to today's webinar. It's going to be interactive, informative, and fun. Last week's webinar discussed performance management and how relevant it is during this time of COVID. Whether or not we should even be bothering about performance appraisals. Does it matter? Is it fair to expect employees to deliver on targets? And should we even be talking about adjusting appraisals? Those were the discussions last week. Today, we want to continue the conversation within the realm of talent management. And currently, business owners, HR managers, all our managers, in fact, are worrying about, leadership. What is this new job going to look like? What is that old job? Do we have to let people go? How do we manage the emotions, the behaviors, and well-being of others? How do we choose the right people to ensure business sustainability post-COVID-19? How do we determine what competencies are needed urgently and where those competencies are needed? The list is long, the concerns are long, and we understand we've been getting a lot of questions. We've been, trying to support organizations. And today's webinar, the intent of it is to really provide you with some of those tips and share with you some of these new digital tools that can support you and help you transform how you hire, how you build, and how you lead talent in your organizations. Basically, we're hoping to give you the confidence to make the tough people decisions, to make those decisions easier, fairer, faster, and smarter. And to help us do that, we have two very, very special presenters with us today. Jacqui And the Seville family has been a long-standing partner with this school. So I'm really honored to have her on hosting this webinar today. Jacqui comes to us as the regional CEO of Seville Assessment Caribbean. She has a background in medicine and international pharmaceuticals. She is a CEO and senior corporate consultant with extensive Fortune 500 experience working internationally across public and private sectors. She has a wealth of practical hands-on assessment and development experience at corporate level. And she's a founding partner of Seville Assessment Caribbean, providing companies with objective and intelligent ways to evaluate and automate aspects of selection development while simultaneously fighting bias in the process. And we do know how challenging that is. Much of Jacqui's work involves innovation and collaboration, agile team development, and leadership risk. Her current passions are post-COVID onboarding and leadership impact. Our co-presenter, Julie Turney, is an experienced podcaster and online moderator. Today, Julie will serve as the voice of the audience. So that's why I said keep posting your comments and your questions on the chat, because Julie is going to be your voice on this webinar. As an HR influencer, she works with leadership to create people-first cultures by designing customer-focused work that inspires people to be their best self and transform analog cultures by upgrading mindsets, skill sets, and performance. It's really helping, it's about helping the new HR to lead with purpose. All right, so I'm gonna hand it over to you guys and Jacqui and Julie.
Hi everyone. So, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to set us up for success as we go through this journey today. I do apologize for the noises in the background, but it's raining outside. The chickens are not happy about it, and I'm still working from home. What I will ask you to do for me today is a few things while I mute my phone, because technology just is all around me. I'm going to ask you to please stay engaged. I will keep the chat open. I am also looking at Facebook, and I am also looking at Zoom. So I will be giving Jacqui your questions, and I will be engaging with Jacqui for you. But I want you to do some things for me. As you look in Zoom, you know that it has some different components, and part of it is that it has reactions. So in the reactions, you'll see clap hands, you'll see thumbs up, you'll see thumbs down, you'll see yes, you're gonna see no. And I want you to use those reactions as we engage today. I just realized, here's my video. I want you to use those reactions as we engage today. I also want you to use the reactions on Facebook, which are a lot easier. So your like, your hearts, give me all of those things so that I know that you're there and that you are enjoying the topic as we share it today. So I'm going to hand over to Jacqui as she starts to make her presentation. And I do hope that you guys will interact with us so that we can have a very engaging discussion. This is your time. This is about you. So as you learn and you have questions, please feel free to share them. Thank you, guys. Jacqui, over to you.
I'm just going to check everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. It's quite a fluid content, and I just want you to imagine that we're all sitting down, having a coffee and having a chat. So the objective of today's discussion really is to have a look at talent. We're all, as HR practitioners, as Sasha said, we're all sitting at home or going into the office feeling quite worried about the work that is in front of us. Next week, I know we're specifically going to look at remote working, but we can't really talk about IT and assessments and artificial intelligence in the workplace without at least thinking about remote working. Julie just mentioned she's got chicken in the background. I've got some wild dogs, and I've got a lack of AC in this room today that's making me feel very stressed indeed. So my empathies go out to you guys as well. So I think we just mentioned what we're worrying about. First thing we're worrying about is our leaders. I had a very interesting conversation with a colleague last night about the focus that we should have on leadership and the pressures that they have to navigate us out of this situation. We spoke about HR managers and business owners worrying about their new job. And as you've probably noticed, as HR practitioners, we've just morphed into our new jobs. Without any job descriptions, without any job raise, we've gone online, we've gone remote. And so we've been worrying about our new jobs, but we've also been worrying about our teams and our organizations' old jobs. How will they look in the future? How are we going to start to design those old jobs? And what about people that we may have to let go, retrain, or put into other roles? I personally have been challenged by managing some of the emotions and the behavior, and by the responsibility that I feel I have for the well-being of others in the workplace. Now that sounds kind of bent, like perhaps I didn't care enough before, but in retrospect, I think many of us are looking back and saying, wow, we really are now looking after the well-being of others. So really, we've got to start thinking about how are we going to choose this new talent that's going to lead us out of this, and it is going to sustain our business post-COVID-19. And will there be a post-COVID-19? Is remote working and restructuring and agile practices going to be the new norm? All right, so I'm just going to very quickly to put this in context, because most of these slides are really going to focus on selection and recruitment. So AI and remote work really are the biggest revolutions that we've had in our HR history. It's been quite worrying how quickly, as an organization, Savile Assessment have been trying in the Caribbean to get people to work and use AI in HR for the last 15 years. And some of the work that it's taken us 10 years to do has actually happened in the last 2 months. And most of this has happened in people's homes. So when we were imagining the future of work and how we were going to get the Caribbean HR teams to embrace the smarter use of technology, we never thought that we'd get to this place in 2 months. So organising work around our private lives has been a huge transition with major implications. We're no longer handcuffed to the office and people have the freedom to work from home. But the point that I'm really making is it's time for us all to embrace remote working, and definitely to embrace artificial technology, predictive algorithms, and more efficient work practices in our HR. I was reminded the other day that a lot of our HR practitioners in the region probably use more artificial technology before they get to the office than they do in the office. So it's worth thinking about what happened about 20 years ago when companies who adopted technology pretty much replaced every company that chose not to. And the reasons generally, I don't need 10 reasons really, hopefully, to convince you, but they are simple. It's developing the talent and the new efficiency of work. So unless you're a Google or an Amazon or a Facebook or a Microsoft, remote teams will have to be far more talented than any of your office-based teams that you can build. Why? Because not having a physical office means that you can hire the best person you can afford to sustain your business now, no longer in a 30-mile radius, but you can actually dial into 99% of the world's talent. So it's really, today is really about thinking, how are we going to approach the selection of people for teams, for projects, for jobs? How are we going to start recruiting? How are we going to reimagine the recruitment that we had planned? And how we're going to move going forward. So right now, perhaps Julie, we will look at the first slide. Let me just get my screen up.
Sure. And at this point, can I just ask people to put in the chat, like, what have you been doing since COVID? If you're working from home, what have you been doing to engage your teams? What have you been doing currently to continue to manage talents while you work from home? Just so I can give Jacqui some feedback.
All right, so perhaps we could start off looking at the first slide and thinking about, so the acquisition of this talent to lead us forward. So talent acquisition, really, it's the key to success in any organization. And even watching COVID TV, as many of us have been, we're now starting to understand the value of things like research, accurate data. Data isn't good enough. We need accurate data. And of course, we need to invest in technology. So you've got to start thinking really about smarter ways to hire new people and to select people who are probably in your organization already to help navigate through this. So we're going to look at the 10 ways that perhaps you should think about transforming the way you're going to recruit and think about the acquisition of this talent. So the first thing, that's obviously using personality assessments. Everything okay?
Yep, go ahead.
And psychometrics, the number one reason why 80% of Fortune 500 companies use psychometrics is because they reduce your risk of a bad hire. So the tool that you want to use has to be a powerful predictor of performance and potential. And when you are looking for tests, psychometric tests, you really do need to look at the ones with the highest validity and the reliability, because it means that they're the most efficient. So why does that really matter so much? Really because it reduces the risk of a bad hire from perhaps 1 in 5 to 1 in 50. And when we think about those risks, what are we talking about? Those are the financial costs, the productivity costs, the disruption to the organization, the disruption to the damage, the damage to the reputation, and the disruption to the business in general. So one of the things that we have talked about a lot in the region is fair assessment. And I don't know, Julie, if you'd like to comment on this. Something I observed about 15 years ago, and I'm still observing it now, is the use of unstructured and very loosely structured interviews in the Caribbean. In your world of high tech, Julie, how does that sit?
So for us, especially in the technology space, what I've found useful in terms of the testing is that it's really helped to determine who is the right fit for the team in a holistic way. And previously we never had that. We hired people mainly based on the fact that we figured they'd be a good fit. they had the right qualifications, but we didn't really have much to gauge in terms of the experience. And then we didn't have much to really navigate the way forward in how we develop the employee once they came into the organization. And what this did is we were able to, one of the things you struggled with was that you always knew the human element of you was going to create some form of bias on a candidate. And what this does for us now is it helps to take away that bias.
Great. And bias is something that we do come across a lot. So when we're looking at certainly competency-based interviews and the world of HR moving to a more competency base, it's something that we do spend a lot of time looking at. Historically, in Trinidad, we often come across something that we call relationship recruiting. And it's not just in Trinidad, to be fair, it's across the region. And relationship recruiting is happily something we're seeing less of, I have to say. So when we talk about relationship recruiting, it's basically maybe recruiting not the best person for the post, but the person is in post because of a particular relationship. So that could be political, it could be a family-based business, but at the end of the day, even for roles like that, the use of predictive algorithms helps us onboard people. And to keep it real, we said this would be a real conversation. If there are people that are in post who maybe are not the best people for the role going forward, there are ways to actually make them more productive. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to sit in a role that they're not well suited for. That has its own effects. So we do give you the tools to develop people who are even in the wrong roles. Does that make sense?
So tell us how you feel about that in the comments, everyone. Don't forget, use the reactions. Let's see the thumbs up, let's see thumbs down, include some comments so we can see what's happening. I saw someone commented just now, Jacqui, that they're using WhatsApp and phone to communicate with their teams right now.
So communication is key in every team. Where predictive analytics can help you and how we can look at the team is help you understand who the team members are. So we work with organizations who have been working in teams remotely for years. And one of the benefits of this is we can kind of tailor the choice of team members to the task in hand. And we have the data to do that. And in some cases, we can get this data for you in 10 minutes. So if you're looking for a particular team with particular roles, with particular outcomes, there is software there that can do it for you in 10 minutes. We can do complete talent audits of organizations anything between 10 minutes and half an hour. And some of the most valid and reliable data that you can get in the HR industry. And having good data takes bias away. We are biased. Often in recruitment, we tend to recruit people who are similar to ourselves. But now we're in a world of celebration of diversity, and particularly post-COVID, we're going to be looking for people who think not only outside the box, we're going to be thinking about people who say, where is the box? There is no box. All right, so maybe we'll move on to another reason why we should be looking at psychometrics.
Oh, I have a question, Jacqui.
Great.
What is the fall off doing virtual recruitment versus face-to-face? That's from Sasha.
In terms of fall off, what do you mean when we're talking about fall off?
Yeah. Sasha, do you want to unmute and just give us a little more context there?
Or perhaps we can gather and put it to the questions at the end.
Okay.
I'm going to actually close this. So I'm not looking at the questions. I will let you deal with those. All right, so the other obvious reason why we're going to be using more psychometrics is cost savings. We won't be having people coming into the office anymore. You'll be able to do scans of your existing workplace and see what talent you've got in there. It could be technological, it could be innovation. So we offer you the tools to make you look at what you've got currently, and you can actually put remote teams together that will work well together. And you can also give remote teams a roadmap of how to get the best out of each other in that team. Yep. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So what are we looking at when we're thinking about measuring these? Could we go back to slide 3 for a moment? Yeah, so we've got to think about the new roles going forward and perhaps doing quick job analyses to have a look at what these new roles look like. What are the new competencies that we're going to need moving forward? So we said we can do a quick look at the talent that we've got and have a look across our organizations. We can define what those competencies are that we need, and then we can very quickly look into the organization to see at what level we have those. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so we also are big fans of environmental fit reports. So we think about the role, we think about the individual, but we also have to think about the environment that we're going to be bringing these people on board. And so this is the real culture of an organization, what it's really like to work there. So this moves away from the kind of thing that we may have in a frame in the office that talks very much about our vision and mission, but it's more like, what does it feel like to work at our place? So if we're more honest about what it's like to work here, we're going to attract candidates that fit into our culture much, much better. Okay, next slide. All right, so something that's going to be more and more important is this reduced time to hire. We're working in the UK in top jobs, particularly in top tech, and the kind of jobs that many organisations in the region will be looking for. And this is going to be talent around digital transformation, tech talent, strategic talent. On average, though, that kind of talent is going in 10 days currently in the UK. So you've got to think about your time to hire, how quickly and objectively you can get these roles defined, how quickly you can get out there, and how quickly you can do these competency-based interviews remotely. And there are tools which will actually give you those competency-based interview guides based on individual candidates' responses. So they
what I would ask the audience too is, can you tell us, like, on average now, what it takes you to fill a role? Any position that you currently put out there, how long does it take you to fill it on average right now? That gives us a good test or a gauge. Go ahead, Jacqui.
Yeah, so we were just talking about kind of relationship recruiting and unstructured interviews. But I mean, if you are working with a team or an organization who are still doing unstructured interviews, it's really time. This is definitely a time to think about using psychometrics and formalizing a more objective practice. Competency-based interviews are generally the norm. where everybody is asking the same questions around the same competencies, and we're all looking for the same outcomes. And those outcomes are all about fit. How well does this candidate fit? And that fit is going to be dependent on how well did you honestly and truly describe the job? How much time did you look at the potential of the job? Have you reimagined the job? So really, it's kind of, you've got to look at the data in, better data in, we'll get much better candidates at the other side. And out of those, we can do merit lists. We have interactive talent boards that we're hoping to get an opportunity to show you towards the end. And again, this will make that analysis fairer and a lot quicker. Nobody needs to plow through hundreds of CVs anymore looking for keywords. I mean, obviously there's software that does that for you, but really those days are gone. Okay, next slide.
So on average, people are taking like between 4 to 6 months to like between a month and 6 months to fill positions. Are those senior roles or are those regular roles within the organization? And are you able to make the correlation between being able to reduce that by using psychometric testing? Does that resonate with you? Is it making sense? Let's see that in the comments so I can see how people are feeling about what we're hearing so far.
6 months. 6 months to get somebody into role is a very long time. And again, are these the practices that have to stop? Really, I mean, the idea here now would be very much to get, if somebody's needed in role, they are very much needed in role. And if that role is taking 6 months to get that person on board, maybe it really is time to have a look at the processes and see where that bottleneck's happening. The other thing we're obviously going to maybe talk about are gig workers. So if it's taking 6 months to employ somebody, how much, if that is an urgent and critical business need, how quickly can we get somebody in to do it? And remember, we can go anywhere in the world for some roles. And certainly in the digital world, the kind of ahead of the curve positioning that many companies now are struggling to get to in the technical world, you will be bringing talent in to do that job. In your industry, Julie, what do you find the gig economy kind of worker, those consultants that are brought in, how much of your workforce is like that?
So at this time in COVID-19, we have about, well, everyone is currently working from home. And so one of the things that we weren't able to dispel, or a myth that we weren't able to dispel immediately, was that everyone can work from home once they're given the right infrastructures. Prior to that, we had about 3 employees that float between our office and the other offices between Canada and Europe. So just about 3 of our employees are really true nomad employees working throughout the different organizations. But however, this has caused us to make a shift and seriously think about, do we really need to recruit people locally and regionally and have them actually sit in seats? So we're actually going through the recruitment process for 6 positions right now, and we're hiring strictly nomad employees going forward, and being able to onboard them successfully remotely has worked very well for us in 2 instances. So we're definitely, our eyes are definitely open to that new scope of work and working with gig employees for sure.
And this is why I'm so glad that Julie is a client, because what I didn't want to do here is just, you know, like, come and sell assessments. That's not really what the objective here is today. I just wanted you to hear from somebody who uses a lot more IT and tech in HR than the average HR practitioner in the region, although they are in the region, just to see how and where they use it. I mean, well, there are things like situational judgment tests, which are very common now. We've got virtual assessment centres, that are very much run now remotely, and they are very, very realistic now. As we all know, there is certain gamification now that's coming into HR. So HR practices, some assessment centres are becoming a little more gamified. So somebody asked me earlier on about dropout rates. So I don't know if this is what we're talking about, but obviously if you've put somebody through a situational judgment test or perhaps an assessment centre, they've had a much more realistic vision of what it's like to work there. And sometimes it's actually good to encourage candidates to actually drop out of the process. So we can actually encourage candidates to self-deselect rather than waiting till we've employed them. It's a much kinder solution all round. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Very aware of the time. All right, so it's really linking into the point that Julie said. You may not necessarily think of yourselves as kind of an international organization, but moving forward, thinking about remote working and working from home and creating agile teams and maybe putting gig workers into the economy, do you need that global functionality? Now, so for example, all of our assessments and our platforms, they are available in multiple languages. So you can assess a candidate in one language and get a report in another. And wherever possible, we do assess our candidates in their first language. And now, of course, we're not just talking about personality tests, we're talking about aptitude testing as well, which is also very, very common first-line screening. So it's good that you can have a platform that you can have access to, and in the case of Arthur Jack, free access to actually start to pull some of these interesting international teams together and not worry about language. Okay, next slide. So one of the things we're just starting to come out of, so quite a few of our inquiries right now have been around talent audits. So historically, talent audits have taken a long time. They were very manual and analog. So obviously now we can do talent audits in, well, in our case, as little as 15 minutes. 55 minutes to an hour, we can actually do a talent audit of the whole organization with like minutes away from the desk. With high accuracy and high validity, we can give you an idea of the talent mix that you've got in your organization right now. So we can look at strategic weaknesses, we can look at strategic strengths, and we can dig deeper than humanly possible. Okay, next slide. Well, I'm going to lean into Julie for a moment after this, just to talk about security. Now, there's a few things that we can do in HR and probably have done in terms of downloading tests, interview guides, making candidates go through particular tests, maybe some of them that we've created at work, some of them that we've bought in. And again, I'm just going to go back to two things, reliability and validity. So first, we've got to make sure that you're using the right tests. And then often people worry about candidates being able to cheat and how authentic that data is. So we can have all sorts of mechanisms to help that, and they're all built into the testing. The same as storing the data. You don't have to worry about storing this kind of behavioral data. And it's a thing now, it's an issue. So whatever tool you use, however you choose to bring psychometrics into your practice, you do have to worry about the security of that data and who has access to the data, because as we know, behavioral data is very, very powerful and very, very attractive. I don't know if you'd like to say anything on that, Julie, about the broader issues of data protection.
So I think for us in the Caribbean, one of the things that I don't believe we focus that much on is in terms of the protecting of data. Yes, we keep information on employees' files, we keep digital files, but in terms of what do we do with that data after the life, as we've gone through the life cycle of an employee, what do we do with that data during the life cycle of an employee? How do we affirm to an employee that that data is not being used otherwise? And I think that that's one thing as HR professionals we need to get a little bit more granular on, in terms of advising employees and putting information on their files that says, listen, what you've given us is safe with us. It will not be used in any other forum unless we're asked to provide it in a court of law. And that's one of the things for sure I know we don't do from this end. But we really need to get a lot more granular on that, especially with things like GDPR. It's very important for us to now shift our focus in terms of how do we secure employee data. For those of you on the call, those of you on Facebook, can you tell me right now, how do you secure employee data? Are you using paper files? Are you using digital files? How important is it for you right now in terms of if you're working from home or have been working from home, how easily accessible has that data been for you over the last couple of weeks, especially if you've needed it? I know like some professionals have advised that they've had to actually literally go to the office to get a file, which on lockdown is not the most ideal thing. And in terms of when you digitize that information, what information do you advise the employee of to let them know that their information is secure? For many people, especially at this point, because we have not ever declared that up front, but I know that as we move to a more digital age, it's going to become more important for us to make that known. So I know in the UK, there actually are documents that we use in HR to advise the employee that their data is secure. And that's something that I could probably share with Sasha to share across the room so that you have that information. But it's very important to document for your employees how you're keeping their data secure.
Fantastic, thank you, Julie. All right, so where are we? So we're looking about the data. Is it legal? Is it safe? Is it secure? Is it robust? And just the other point is it's very, very valuable to the organization. So having a platform or a format to not just do all of this competency data. So there's probably many organizations now that are already using great psychometrics, but don't have the facility to gather all of that data and said, you know what, we've just done all of the leadership team has just done a retreat. Could we just get all of that data in one place? So this is where the technology can really, really help you. Okay, next slide. So I think we've pretty much covered most of these points. There's so many ways that AI is being used in HR. So that's a whole other webinar in itself. So thinking about, we have test times, I think we mentioned as short as 10 minutes. So we don't have to worry about retreats, time away from desks. If some candidates are particularly hard on themselves or self-critical, we can pull that data up. We can see that. Again, if some people are a little bit more adventurous with their scoring, we're able to pick that up. If where else can we pick up? If someone, although they score high on something, like let's think about a typical leader now. So they may be very high in their leadership competencies, but you know what? Right now, they're lacking in a little bit of motivation, like most of us. Because, you know, where do we start? So just because your competency level in any given competencies is high, your level of motivation is going to affect how your talent appears, how it turns up. The same can be said of stress. So we can actually predict behaviorally, in many cases, what of your behaviours are likely to slip under stress like this, like we're under now? We can also conversely indicate areas that you would be more proficient under stress. So these are the kind of things that high validity psychometrics can bring to your HR practice. Over many years of talking across the Caribbean, there's certain things that have come up before HR is HR needs a seat at the table, HR need to be heard. So I think I'm going to move towards the close perhaps and say, HR, this is really your time to shine with the use of your data, with the use of talent and analytics, with seeing people in new ways, seeing the challenge that is ahead of us behaviourally will help HR navigate a path forward for the talented staff that many of you already have that may be retrained into doing something slightly different. And we're here to help you do that. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Julie?
Yes, I would. So it's very interesting, especially at this period, at this juncture. I think it's very important for us as HR professionals to recognize the value that we bring to the table at this point. And you know, you may ask the question like, why and for what reason, or what relevance is psychometric testing to this at this point? But picture it this way. You have a set of people who make up your organization. There are two things you've always wanted to know about these people, which is, can they make you money? Can they save you money? Can they keep your people happy? And what that test does is it helps you to know the answer to those questions. Do I have the right people in the right teams? Are they the right fit? And this is the perfect time, especially if you're at home, to kind of rejig those teams or look at those teams, reevaluate people and their motivations and see what they're really bringing to the table at this point. And whether or not you need to have all of these particular roles that you are seeing right now. In addition to that, it's a great time to actually evaluate whether or not you can train and develop these people while they're home. A lot of people are at home on social media, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're listening to social media influencers who are asking them these questions. Are you really happy in your job? Are you really engaged in your job? Do you really want to stay at this place and work? And how we engage our employees while we're going through this particular moment in history is paramount to whether or not we're going to be able to continue to retain that talent. So the robust training plans that we put in place for people while they continue to work from home says, yes, I value you as an employee. How do we do that? When we go through the psychometric testing process, we can see where those competency gaps are and skill gaps are, and we can help them to fill them while they work from home. While we may not have work in particular, you can still, there are lots of webinars as we are experiencing right now that are going on that are helping employees to fill those competency skill gaps that they are experiencing while they're at home. You are constantly relying on the fact that while you have laid off people or while you have people at home, that they are interested in returning to you. And I want to give an example of one experience that I had with another HR professional. So I have a friend who works in the airport industry, and she runs the restaurants. The company that she works with runs all of the restaurants in the US, all of the airports in the US. So all of their staff are based in those airports. They've had to lay off everyone because travel isn't happening. But now they're at a point as the US is opening up slowly but surely, they're at a point now where they want to re-engage those employees, especially those top performers. And what's happening is that as they go to re-engage these employees and say, okay, we're ready to open back, or airports are opening in the US, we're ready to engage you. People are saying to them, well, no, I don't want to come back and work for you. I'm going to stay laid off. I'm going to enjoy whatever funds I'm getting from government right now, and I'm going to look for something else. Or they're saying, I've actually found something else. I found something that fills my passion and my purpose. So, as I said before, there are social media influencers out there right now who are asking your people to think about whether or not they want to return and work for your organization. And how you engage them right now is critical. How you coach your leadership to engage them right now is also critical. And doing something like a test that says, well, these are the competency gaps that you have. This is how we're going to help you fill them. This is how we're going to onboard you back into the organization, because there is that talk of a shift of how do we onboard employees? How do we re-engage employees if we have not been engaging them while they were home? Because a lot of times in other conversations that I've had since we've been on lockdown with other HR professionals and other employees, there's an overambitious chicken out here who's trying to speak louder than me, is whether or not these people actually want to return to the workforce. And so it really is important that we find ways to engage our workforce, and the use of technology is key right now. So we need to look at those technologies that are available to us to help us to engage our employees, because at the end of the day, it all boils back down to engagement. An engaged employee is an inspired employee. We want our employees to feel inspired and excited about what organizations have to offer. And the only way that happens is if we are making the connection. If we're not making that connection, then we are going to lose our workforce. So that would be my 50 cents on optimizing technology.
That was $1. That was $1.
It sounded like $1.
$1. Julie, some great points there. You know, there's something that's come up in the chat that I think a lot of people are thinking about, and it's going to be linked to a comment that you just made. And this is the comment verbatim. In this period, companies would often like to retain people as far as possible, or as appropriate, rather than bringing in new people. To what extent some companies express this as a concern? Well, I'm going to go back to, I'm not going to answer the question. I don't think there's a single answer to this question. Number one question is, how engaged with the employees before COVID-19 is my first question. My second question is, we would all love to retain everybody, but as I hope there are some CEOs, some leaders, some serious decision makers in the talent market that are listening to this today, it may not be appropriate, unfortunately, for everybody to come back to the new organization. There may not be roles for them. As people work remotely, as we use more software, we really are, organizations are having to think about who do they retain? Who do you promote? We're going to be we've all developed new skill sets and competencies during this period of time. And these are the same skills and competencies that we've been struggling to find. It's the innovation, the adaptation to technology. It's the agile thinking, the agile working practices. Now, if you're a CEO or a HR director, and if it was in your power to set up your company today from scratch, how different would it look to the office that you're going to walk into at some stage next month? And I'm going to leave that as a mic drop moment, because I know if I was setting my company up tomorrow, it would look extremely different to the one I'm working with. And thank goodness I have the facility to change that, which is exactly what we're doing in the Caribbean. Well, what do you think about that point, Julie, for those decision makers to think just for a moment, if they were setting up their business today from scratch, how would it look different? So maybe this, before we go to questions or any open mic, is this a good opportunity to just show the video of the interactive screens?
Give me 1 second, because
All right, so while you set that up.
I'll set it up, just a sec.
All right, I'm just having another quick questions in the chat. What role would psychometric evaluation play in staff evaluation? So the first question is, are competencies clearly articulated in your organisation in a manner that can be measured with metrics? And if they are, psychometrics will be extremely useful in terms of staff evaluation. In terms of training, retraining, and the retention of talent, it's going to go back to the knowing what people are good at. It's knowing what people prefer not to do. It's knowing the things that people are unlikely to do. It's knowing the things that people are not motivated to do. And it's knowing the people, the things that people will not do. And this is all done by self-assessment. So this is not what other people say about individuals. This is what individuals say about themselves, which we do know is a highly predictive, a highly accurate predictor of workplace performance. What people say they do and what they actually do under accurate assessment is very, very valid. Okay, anything else, Julie? For those interested in the concept of virtual assessment centres, that's way too much to deal with here. So I will get Sasha to get in touch with you around the virtual assessments and the tools for that.
Sure. Jacqui, while we wait for Julie to bring up the screen, I'll just go to the questions. There's another question. A major concern for my organization is sending this psychometric test to potential candidates via email link and the candidate having another person completing the test. Are there measures to mitigate?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So there's two questions. One's about behaviour. So you can actually have the assessment completed with camera on. So that's something that's been happening a lot during lockdown. So when we come to behavioural assessments, people rarely ever get somebody else to do their behavioural assessment. So that rarely happens. And then we have many measures built into the process, and we'll be able to tell straight away if somebody's faking it, if there's inconsistencies. And of course, if you're trained to use the tool, you'll be able to see that straight away. And that will also come across in personal feedback.
Sure.
So that's one way. In terms of aptitude testing now, so that's where we have a right and wrong answer. So it could be numerical, verbal, error tracking. Again, you can do them with cameras on. There are tests, there are measures built into the aptitude tests as well. And again, we do actually provide much shorter tests that we can just reevaluate the results that the candidate sent in.
Thanks for that, Jacqui. Another question. With the reduction of person-to-person interviews, the person-to-person interaction, such as body language, is now going to be difficult to assess. How are assessments going to fill that gap? Is it possible at all?
Well, virtual interviewing, so you'll still be able to, so using your camera, and there are programs and software for virtual interviewing, so you'll still have the facility to observe body language. But I do find this very interesting, because as an experienced interviewer in the Caribbean, I've noticed that many people don't actually notice that body language. I always do, because it's like a passion of mine. But yes, we can see things from body language, and you will still be able to see that on a camera. But before we even get to body language, I think we're going to go back to the competencies and remote working. So before we even get to where we're interviewing candidates, we really have to be clear about what it is that we're looking for. And I just
Agreed. I see Julie's screen is back up.
Yes, I'm ready to show the video.
All right, so Julie's back on, Jacqui.
Okay, so this is just a short 2-minute video. We'll just tell you a little bit about talent analytics. You can see it on our website, you can see it in LinkedIn, and you can see it on YouTube.
Okay.
Action.
Go.
There doesn't seem to be any sound, but that's okay. So what this video is highlighting is just what some of those interactive screens can look like. So here we're looking at these, we were looking at challenge areas, we were looking at strength areas, and that was a sample of 41, a group of 41 people. We flashed through that a little bit quickly, but you can always, we can send the link for it. But it just gives you a quick idea of what the screen looks like based on competencies, and we can dig down into individual behaviours. If we have time, I will actually pull up a live platform demo for you. But if not, we've arranged lots of live platform demos and lots of links. So please get in touch with Sasha and she will send you a link. We've arranged 4 links for you to be able to see what a talent audit looks like. And we've arranged links for you to see what a work roles look like. So what does a team of people look like together when we analyse their competencies?
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to touch on something that I think was a question that was being asked with regards to remote onboarding, and I'll share my experience and hopefully that helps answer your question to some extent. So we recently recruited 2 employees who we hired completely virtually. So we went through the entire virtual process of recruiting these employees. And what that did for us was it allowed us the opportunity to see how remote onboarding would work. So after we went through the entire recruitment process virtually, which included video interviews, the psychometric testing, and so on, the actual tests that we would have done in terms of functional testing to ensure that employees were actually able to perform in the role, because I think functional tests are key for a lot of the positions that we recruit for, which are mainly technical roles. We then onboarded the employees. So what we did was we actually got all of our team leads, all of our senior leadership to do videos, a 2-minute video introducing themselves to the person, introducing their team to the person, and saying, well, hi, my name is Jacqui, this is my team, this is what we do, 2 minutes. And then our office manager actually did a virtual video of the office. So she went one day, she did a video of all of the office, what the person would see when they actually come back to work, and then actually took a video of their desk so they could see, and this is actually where you are going to work as well. This is your desk. And then we actually got the laptop delivered, all of the technologies were put on by our IT department, but then we actually were able to deliver the laptop to the person. Then we asked for feedback because it's important to get feedback from our employees. So one person that we recruited was here. Another person that we recruited actually lives in Trinidad. And so we asked for feedback in terms of how did the virtual experience go for you? And both of them came back and said, this was actually an amazing experience. I actually thought it was better than some of the actual physical onboarding experiences that I've had in other organizations. So for virtual onboarding, it definitely is possible. And those are some of the things that you could do to actually virtually onboard employees.
Yeah, and we also have tools specifically for onboarding, and they have an interactive virtual capacity as well. So we have things like onboarding reports that actually help you onboard into a team. We have things like team role reports. Again, will help you know your place where you can add most value to a team. And we do actually have online coaching reports. So they're interactive and they're designed to be used online with your employees. So this could be coaching before they come back to work from whatever level of traumatic stress people are going back to work from, because I think everybody's had a certain amount of mental stress during this time. So it is worth thinking about how are we going to communicate with our employees? How are we going to onboard them? Will this trauma have had an impact on competency? If so, how and where? Are there new competencies that we're going to have to bring in into the organization? If so, what are those competencies? Are there people that already have the competencies that we can coach and develop? Yes, there are. So how can we do that remotely? And it's just to say that there are tools that will help you do that. So,
Jacqui, a question coming up now based on the same lines of comments that you're making. One of the questions coming from Facebook is, you've been talking about competencies, and the question is, we got a little taste in the video of what some of those competencies might be. Are those competencies in the WAVE assessment questionnaire, are those relevant to post-COVID, and would there be any adjustments? The question is, would the WAVE questionnaire be revised to accommodate post-COVID workforce?
absolutely not. No, it isn't necessary. For the competencies and behaviors, we will give you the language so you and your leadership team can actually have a discussion. We have things called card sorts, where we have cards with the language that deeply defines what do we really mean by this competency. So everybody can agree what good looks like. So the competencies remain the same. How much of that competency do we need? Or how little of that competency do we need? So maybe where there's innovation in the organization, but maybe now we need to find out who are the most innovators and what kind of innovation. Do we need radically new ideas? Do we need old ideas to be tweaked? Because we can measure that difference. So the other great thing that we can do is we can actually provide you with the competency model. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that we're happy to give everybody is the WAVE competency model. It's an award-winning model. And we're happy to share that with you, which clearly defines all of the competencies and in deep language, right down to the facets of behavior and how they look. And we can even tailor those. If you already have a competency model, we can actually tailor the language to fit your competency model. I think, I'm not sure I answered the question there. I think I've got to be over enthusiastic there on the competency model.
You definitely answered the question, Jacqui. So
Did I get my dollar?
You did get your dollar. I'd give you dollar sign emojis, but I can't.
Okay.
But you definitely did.
I want to put my 1 cent in as well. You've been talking about the WAVE instrument, and of course, you know, persons who want to become certified in instruments and learn, you know, the intimate value and how it can be applied. There's that certification program that's coming up, so don't forget to also mention that. So while we can share with you and work through the competency frameworks, and so there's also that opportunity to become very familiar with the instruments as you go through the certification program as well.
Absolutely. And as speaking as someone who actually did the certifications, it definitely does help you to get a deep dive into what you're looking to benefit the organization with. And that language that Jacqui was talking about really is useful as she coaches you and guides you through the different languages that you're using based on the people in the workforce that you are speaking to. And so when you're developing that competency framework, you really do get to see the importance of the dialogue that you have with employees as they take those tests, helping them to appreciate that what they're saying is very much about themselves. And then how do you answer questions about yourself and how you want to see yourself going through the workforce going forward.
Absolutely, well said. It's been a challenge to try and get all of the messaging done. There is so much to cover, but what we are happy to do is just get in touch with Sasha. We will share the competency model with you. We'll share the language with you. We can help you maybe add a little bit more detail and get your own competencies a little bit more granular so you can feel out and measure them. And we didn't have much time to have a look at the actual platform, but if you'll feel free to join us on our next webinar on the 28th, where most of that will actually be looking at the platform. If you want access to the platform before then, access is available an hour after this meeting, so just get in touch with Arthur Lackjack, or visit our website and get in touch with us through our website on any of our pages, and all of those inquiries will come straight back to the school.
Are we going to answer? I think there are about 3 questions that we didn't answer.
People are happy to stay online.
Do we have, okay, so one question that was asked was, what are the risks involved in doing virtual recruitment versus face-to-face?
Sorry, I just missed that last one there.
What are the risks involved with doing virtual recruitment versus face-to-face? I think we touched on this a little bit before, but.
I think if it's something that you're just thinking about now, without getting too deep into the conversation at the end of the meeting, if you're really thinking about doing a talent or develop an assessment center, I would strongly advise you to get in touch with one of the consultants or the specialists that do that, because it really is an art, it's a technological art form now. So all of the tools are there, the dashboards are there. I don't really think that I don't really think there is a high risk there. As long as you're well trained to use the tools, you know what you're looking at, you're not making assumptions from the data, you've been trained to use these tools, I don't really think that there's any disadvantage. I mean, it is nice to have the interaction, it's nice to watch candidates compete against each other, but in a virtual environment now, we won't be able to do that. I do remember having assessment centres, 12 people in a room pretending to be the CEO of a pretend company and watching them. But we'll be doing that on camera now, so we won't have the synergy of interaction. But I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that, Sasha, from your own experience of running your assessment and development centres at the school. What differences can you see?
Sure. So for us, I mean, we have been doing development as well as recruitment work using virtual assessments. As you would have mentioned earlier on, there are a lot of online simulations, inbox exercises, in-basket exercises, interview simulations, and so on that we've been using very seamlessly virtually. And we have maintained, what I would say that is critical that we found is that you must maintain the reliability of the assessment center through very deliberate design and delivery of the center. So the administration, the instructions, the whole experience of the assessment center has to, you need to pay a little bit more attention because you want to make sure the messaging, you're not seeing the languaging, you're not necessarily sensing the anxiety with the candidates and so on, as you would in a face-to-face environment. So therefore, it's important that you make sure that the administration experience also is top-notch. So we have the instruments and we've been using the virtual instruments seamlessly, but the experience and the administration is also critical for that reliability.
Yeah, I definitely, Sasha, I agree 100%. I didn't want to particularly get too technical, so I think this is a whole other subject in itself. I think if you're thinking about doing a virtual assessment centre, have a chat to one of us. It's free, our consultations cost nothing, but there may be another opportunity without the expense of an assessment centre. You may just need to have maybe a psychometric assessment and an ability assessment, and may not have to go through the whole process of an assessment centre. We can help you put your merit list together, decide what your cutoff scores are, but there's so much software around now to do things like this. It's just making sure you invest in the best software.
Okay, and the last question is, how do you decide on the necessity of aptitude testing? My organization utilizes the same assessment for all positions.
Well, who's chomping at the bit? Come on, ladies. Come on, ladies. Same aptitude assessment for all positions. Feel free to add.
Sasha, do you want to comment on that?
I guess I can comment. I was gonna, what I can say is that as you go, so let's start at the job levels. Depending on the job levels, there are different aptitude assessments that would be more applicable. As we get into the more executive level type positions, your critical thinking, how you make assumptions, you analyze data, how you draw those conclusions become more important as a decision maker and an influencer for strategy and direction in your organization, versus when you look at the lower levels in the organization, you might be looking at aptitude in terms of numerical and verbal abilities. You know, how do I process, how do I comprehend verbal information or calculations and so the aptitude assessments are quite different. The requirements for aptitude, different levels of aptitudes are different at various levels. So to use one assessment, one aptitude assessment across the board definitely is not going to be a valid assessment of someone's ability. And in some cases, the job as well. So there's a job level, there's also the nature of the job. Some might be more numerical, some might be more qualitative. So your aptitude assessment also has to take into consideration the weighting of these particular parameters or dimensions of the role that you're looking at. So definitely it's not a one size fits all, if I were to sum it up for aptitude testing.
I would agree with that 100%, Sasha. And I think you kind of put yourself at a disadvantage if you're doing a one single aptitude test, because you're disadvantaging the candidate because you're not really getting a true sense of who they are by doing that test that way. And then you're disadvantaging yourself because you're making the assumption that the person is going to give you what you need based on that one test. So I think in addition to Sasha's comments, you really want to be careful in terms of how you go about that aptitude test. I mean, for us, the test we would give a developer would not be the same test that we would give a data analyst. Definitely wouldn't be the same test that we would give someone in finance if it was a CFO versus an accounts assistant. Completely different things. So you really need to focus on your job role, and then the test should be according to the job role that you are recruiting for and the level that you are recruiting for as well.
Well done, ladies. Can I do a hand clap? Yay. I know as HR people, we have to use the tools that we're given, but if the tools that you're given are going to compromise a decision, don't use the tool. I'm not saying that about your tool, but I'm just saying that aptitude tests are the first line that we use in selection. We do aptitude tests are available in Trinidad from as little as $20, I think, 20 US dollars, 20 or 30 US dollars.
Yeah,
So they're not even classified. Some people say, but testing is expensive. It is not expensive. It's completely cost effective. And in this day and age, you can't afford now to start selecting and recruiting people without testing them. We just can't afford a bad fit. And that's the simplicity of it. We don't have the time or the resources for training, for development. We need to onboard people who are ready to roll right now. We really do. And aptitude tests can help. Everything all of these speakers said, totally 100% agree. And then you have to think about the candidate experience. If I was a CEO taking the same test as a security guard, I might not want to come work for you guys. Just a thought. But aptitude tests are consistently, and they are the most valid predictor of performance. So if you can only have one test and you've got a super tiny budget, choose an aptitude test.
Right, definitely. So guys, we're beyond our time. So I'm just going to just share a couple closing slides just for some upcoming activities that we are hosting across the school over the next couple months or so. So I just want to, as we wrap up, share with you on next week, when Webinar Wednesday event is going to be discussing managing a remote workforce, and that is going to be facilitated and led by Mrs. Teresa White, who is the Group Director, HR at the Anson McCall Group. So make sure to register so you can get the Zoom link to join that session. And of course, we also have in June, our oversubscribed Balanced Scorecard program. And those dates are within the 1st and 2nd week of June. There are a few spots remaining, so make sure to log on and register for that as well. And as we close, a reminder, there's a WAVE Psychometrics certification program that's happening in the months of end of May, I should say, and in the month of June, we'll be having the module 2 and 3 that will give you the certification, and you'll see online there is the registration link posted on the chat. And of course, today, all registrants, we're giving you guys free access to the introductory psychometric webinar that's happening on the 28th of May, and that's going to be the kickoff for the WAVE certification program. So we will be sending you those links to register for these various events as we go through. So as we say goodbye, until next week, I want to say thank you to Jacqui, thank you to Julie. It's been a wonderful webinar. We've run out of time, but I want to say thank you so much. It's been very topical. We still have a couple questions to go, so we'll try and you know, respond to those offline. So thank you guys very much, and to all our Webinar Wednesday registrants and attendees, be safe and take care of yourself until we meet again next week. All right, and of course, don't forget to give us your feedback on the webinar today and on any particular topics you may want to have us host as part of the Webinar Wednesday series. So be sure to give that feedback. So thank you guys, and we would meet again soon. I got a break in my connection there. All right, so take care guys, and we would stay on a little bit so that you can have access to the feedback links and so on the chat box. You can remain on or chat if you wish